Hello, my name is Taya Graham, and welcome to the Police Accountability Report. This is a breaking news edition of the show that, as you already know, is all about holding police accountable. But the information we have to share with you today is also a testament to how that process takes a communal effort. And nothing is more indicative of what that means than the critical facts obtained thanks to one of our viewers, Noli D. It is because of her work to file a Public Information Act request that I have some new information about a troubling case to report. But before we get started, I want you watching to know that if you have evidence of police misconduct or brutality, please share it with us and we might be able to investigate. Please reach out to us. You can email us tips privately at par@therealnews.com and share your evidence of police misconduct. You can also message us at Police Accountability Report on Facebook or Instagram, or at Eyes on Police on Twitter. And of course, you can message me directly at Taya's Baltimore on Twitter and Facebook. And please like, comment, and share. You know I read your comments and that I appreciate them. Now, I'm sure none of us could forget these jail cell images of torture and the painful death of Shali Tilson. Tilson was incarcerated in 2018 after having a mental health crisis. But like many cases where law enforcement inexplicably intervenes when someone is mentally ill, Tilson's story has a horrific ending. As you can see, they left Tilson naked and without a bed. They did not provide him water, a punishment so cruel he eventually died of dehydration. The guards involved were not charged, even though a lawyer for Tilson's family has made the case they should be indicted. But now we are learning, thanks to Noli D, that these startling images are not the end of the story. Now we know, thanks to these documents, there is much that is kept hidden from public view and that state officials may be involved in a cover-up, either to destroy or hide other video that might have been critical to proving that Tilson's death was in fact a crime. Now, Stephen, you reviewed the documents. What do they tell you about the evidence in the Shali Tilson case?
Well, the documents we received, thanks to Noli D, were from the Rockdale, Georgia County prison officials who gave us about 30 pages of documents from the aftermath of trying to obtain the video, or let's say obtain it, trying to record and save the video from during the period of time when Shali Tilson was in the prison, which was from about March 4th, 2018 to about March 14th, 2018. And what's interesting about it is it's like a paper trail of a cover-up, basically, if you look at it. Basically, what you have is a long and lengthy letter to a captain demoting them because so much of the video was lost. But what you don't have is any explanation in the documents of how and why the video was lost. So let's take a look at the documents. We'll show them up on the screen right now. You can see first that there is a letter reprimanding this captain who was ordered by the director of the prison to take all the video from different variety of places throughout the prison and record and save them for later for an investigation. So what happens is this captain orders a tech person to do so. And then the captain delivers the drive without much of the video that was actually available at the time. And it's quite a laundry list and inventory of video that goes missing. So not just random video, but video of, for example, there are body cameras on officers who are attack unit who were dealing with Shali Tilson that has subsequently disappeared. There is video from outside.
And isn't that where the family asserts that Shali might have been a victim of excessive force?
Exactly.
So it's kind of interesting that his interaction with the attack unit, which is known for putting their hands on inmates, has disappeared.
Right. There is video that outside the unit itself, outside the cell that he was in, that is missing for subsequently 4 or 5 days prior to his death. There is video missing from some of the intake when he was processed. There's video missing from almost every aspect of what happened to him. Now, so we do have some video, which we have shown you, and we showed you at the beginning, and we'll show throughout this discussion. It's not clear whether some of that video was eventually leaked to his family's lawyers. We're trying to figure that out. But the bottom line is that within these documents, it is clear that a ton of video goes missing. A ton of video is not copied onto this drive that they bought at Office Depot.
Right.
And the drive is not, when the captain delivers the drive to the director of the prison, does not inform them that the video is actually missing. So it raises a ton of questions.
Wasn't the captain ordered to save the footage, then ordered a subordinate to do it?
Yes.
So wait, what happened to the footage?
Well, that's the thing about these documents. There's no explanation.
No explanation whatsoever. What happened to the footage?
No explanation ever given within these documents of what happened to the footage. That's why I think this is can be safely characterized as a cover-up, because it seems quite convenient that someone was ordered to do something. He or she orders a subordinate doesn't do it, and then there's no explanation what happened. I mean, obviously someone either consciously didn't save it, consciously deleted it, or both. and no one is held responsible except a slight demotion from captain to lieutenant of one of the jail officials. So we're talking about a slight demotion with a little bit of money and nothing really, of substantive. And certainly, I mean, at the very least, this looks like a criminal obstruction because, well, it shows why probably there should have been a criminal investigation.
Absolutely.
Because this is obstruction of justice and a very clear case of obstruction. In criminal cases, there's an absolute custody of chain of custody of evidence. And there's evidence here that, evidence was absolutely lost and there's no accountability for it.
I think this really supports the attorney for the family's claim that there is a cover-up going on
Yes.
and that they're trying to prevent anyone from receiving criminal charges. Any one of those people in the last 4 or 5 days of Shali's life who passed by his cell, that did not give him water, that did not give him food, that did not give him any sort of attention, that did not give him medical attention. I think this really supports the attorney's assertion that this is a cover-up and they're trying to avoid holding anyone criminally accountable. The bottom line is this. This case proves that law enforcement can't police law enforcement. I mean, that's obvious when you read the memos. As Stephen and I discussed, there is no explanation of how or why the videos were lost. No direct recounting of how they went missing, just a long list of complicit actors making up a paper trail to paper over the very real death of Shali Tilson. But there's something else hidden in what we obtained, a message or a symbol of sorts that is even more disturbing. And that's the idea that somehow, some way, a demotion, a drop in rank, would be enough to make the obstruction of the investigation of a man's inhumane death go away. That a reprimand letter and a slight drop in pay would be a just punishment for the negligence and downright cruelty we witnessed. That the unjust death of an innocent man is somehow equivalent to a bureaucratic slap on the wrist. Perhaps the response we read is simply a playbook for the intrinsic cruelty of our penal system writ small, a couple pages of euphemistic and bureaucratic jargon that's somehow supposed to wipe away the arrogance and indifference of the country's prison industrial complex. And it's a system our next guest has firsthand experience with. Jordan Cahill was incarcerated at Lowell Corrections in Florida. She has direct experience with the abuse and misconduct that many experience while incarcerated. Jordan, thank you so much for joining us and for being willing to share your story. So first, tell us, how long did you spend in Lowell Corrections and what you experienced personally that you felt was a crime?
Hi there. First, I'd like to thank you for having me on, both Taya and Steve. It's amazing that you guys are doing this show and doing it in the format that you are.
Thank you.
Thank you as well. I did 8.5 years on a 10-year sentence, and Florida is an 85% state. So if you have good gain time during your incarceration, you can get out at 8.5 years, unless you have a minimum mandatory sentence. So I did 8.5 on 10, and there are crimes that happen every single day inside of Florida corrections, as well as corrections around the state and the nation that are illegal. If a layperson were to do these things, they would be arrested and then charged with a felony. But incarcerated, there is a blanket of protection that the institution has for all of its officers and staff members that almost allows them to perpetrate the exact same crimes against inmates that the inmates may have perpetrated against the community.
Wow.
And why one is illegal and one is not is just beyond all of us.
Jordan, that's really interesting that you said that if a regular person out in the community did some of the things that you've seen correctional officers do, that they would be put in prison for those actions. What kind of incidents of misconduct and abuse did you witness while you were in prison that you think rise to the level of criminality?
Medical negligence is one of the biggest things in prisons. There are women and men who are languishing and suffering every single day, and there is medical neglect going on. You've got cancer patients and HIV patients that are not receiving proper or appropriate medical care. They're shunned. They're made to feel like they are feigning these things to get some kind of leeway in the prison system. So the medical neglect is one of the largest things. But beyond that, you have got staff members who are using prisons as their own personal playgrounds. And that goes from assaulting and physically accosting inmates who don't do exactly as they say when they say. So they feel like physical brutality is the only method that they can use, and or physical and sexual assaults against inmates. And the biggest of victim profile for that is women incarcerated. You have a majority of male ratio staff, so the male to female staff ratio is very offset, and you have these men coming into female institutions and sexually victimizing women nonstop, and nothing is done about it.
It's terrible. Jordan, I know that once you left Lowell, you probably want to put that part of your life behind you, but you ended up speaking out. Why did you come forward and protest and speak out?
Because I'm one of thousands of victims within the state of Florida. I happen to have a big mouth, and I always have. My mother told me a long time ago I needed to be an attorney or a doctor or, some very high-profile position. But I don't think it's just. I think that what I endured in there, what I saw other inmates endure in there, is criminal in nature. I know it to be criminal. I'm an educated person, and what is happening there is a faction of corrections officers who, again, under this blanket of protection from these state agencies, are allowing their fellows to engage in absolutely atrocious stuff.
Jordan, at one of the protests about the conditions in Lowell, there was a disabled ex-inmate that was made a quadriplegic after she was attacked by guards. Can you talk a little bit about what happened to Cheryl Weimer?
Yes, ma'am. Cheryl Weimar was an inmate who was already disabled. She was actually confined to a wheelchair for a pre-existing hip condition. She was in prison for aggravated assault. She had several years to do. In fact, she was supposed to be released in 2021. And she was told that she had a cleaning duty of cleaning the toilet. In Florida prisons, the way that the bathrooms are set up, it's not feasible for a wheelchair to be able to gain access to the actual toilet. Mm-hmm. And so for her to clean that didn't seem practical. She, advised the officers that she had a pass that allowed her to not have to do this. They, in turn, because she refused to work, picked her up out of her wheelchair, slammed her on her neck. They drug her to an off-camera area where they beat her and drug her again. This is by her feet. So as dragging her, her head is hitting on the ground. Wow. And it forced her to be a quadriplegic. Since that time, she was originally moved to a outside hospital in Jacksonville and then subsequently moved back to Lowell under LDOC's care. Wow. Where she's now being kept in secret and hidden. We've had House of Representatives go to the prison to try to see her, attorneys to try to go see her. She's still shackled to a bed. She literally cannot get up and walk, and they still have her shackled to a bed as an inmate instead of emergency releasing her.
This is absolutely amazing to me. You're telling me that the same people who are responsible for making her a quadriplegic are actually the ones that are watching over her right now, as opposed to her getting regular medical care.
Absolutely. They are the ones in charge. They're the ones that are making those calls. And in fact, the officers who are responsible for this, so there were 4 officers, one of those being a lieutenant. The lieutenant who is named in this, his name is Keith Turner. He was never admonished. He was never disciplined. There was no accountability for him or the gentleman underneath him, and no charges were ever brought to them. Now, their names were named in a lawsuit filed by Cheryl Weimar's attorney on her behalf. However, after this incident, the lieutenant, Keith Turner, was arrested for molesting his own stepdaughter and her friend for the past 10 years.
Oh my God.
So he didn't get arrested for breaking the neck of an inmate, but he did subsequently get arrested a couple months ago for child sex crimes. So these are the kind of people that are in charge of us in the Florida Department of Corrections.
Wow. That is just absolutely just devastating to hear. Let me ask you this. When women are in prison, they're in an incredibly vulnerable position. And some of the women that I saw speak out talked about being coerced into sexual relations with these guards. Is that something that you have witnessed? And I think also some women have even been stalked outside of, once they leave prison, like stalked on social media by these same corrections officers?
Absolutely. It happens every day. In fact, if the Office of Inspector General, let's just say they subpoenaed some phone records of these officers, what they would see is that these officers, while they are on compound, they're using their free time to look up inmates on Facebook and social media and things like that to kind of get a personal feel for them. Wow. They use the databases inside the prison to look up what their charges are. I personally am from Marion County. Lowell Correctional is in Marion County. When I was sent to prison, I was around a great majority of people who I had gone to school with here in town, or who knew my brother, or who knew my mom. My stepdad also used to work at that prison. And so I went in knowing a lot of people. And so I had a different rapport with staff. I wasn't treated as bad as some would say. But consequently to that, I was sexually harassed. I was sexually assaulted while I was incarcerated. Since I've been out, I've actually had some of the perpetrators reach out to me on Facebook as far as sending me friend requests and personal messages. Keith Turner, the one that broke Cheryl Weimar's neck and is responsible for her and the two young girls he's now being charged with, also sexually assaulted me 10 years ago. It was actually 11 years ago in 2009. And so I see these people in the community all the time. I still live here. I see them at the mall. I see them at the grocery store. So, yeah, I mean, it's terrible.
Jordan, I'm so sorry you experienced that, but we appreciate you speaking out about it. You know, you might have heard us talk about the death of Shali Tilson earlier, where he was killed by dehydration because he was deprived of water. Why do you think these types of deaths keep happening in our prisons? What do you think?
There is a lack of care and empathy for human nature when corrections officers are hired. One of the biggest things here in Florida are the requirements to become a FLDOC officer, and that is you must be over the age of 18, have a high school diploma or a GED or equivalent, not have any outstanding debt or a felony. That is all it takes to be a corrections officer.
Wow.
So you have people coming in that have no training in dealing with human interactions. So they come in, they're told that these people can't do these things and we have to watch them. But then human nature takes place. You cannot put humans in charge of humans and there not be abuse or corruption. And so if you look at the Stanford prison experiment, that's one telltale sign of what's happening in here. You've got people coming in who've never had any kind of control or authority in their lives per se. And they go there and it's almost a high. They get off on the fact that they have this ability to control other people. And when you don't adhere to that, when you don't listen to them, there is a consequence in there that all it takes is that person and one officer they're friends with to stick side by side, and they literally can ruin your life.
Wow. You know, this is my last question for you, Jordan. We also talked about how there's a cover-up and how if it's possible for correctional guards and jail officials to be held accountable for what they do. Have you seen any way for a prisoner to defend themselves or their rights? Is there anything that when someone is incarcerated that they can do to protect themselves, or are they defenseless?
Pretty defenseless right now. What we are trying to implement in Florida are the mandatory use of body cameras by all Department of Corrections officials.
That's an excellent idea.
Body camera, you can't refute it. You can't argue it. There's audio, there's video surveillance. And when you've got a team of 6, 7, 8, 9 officers all showing a different perspective, but the same point of view, you can't refute the evidence that's there. Technology is used all the time to put criminals in prison. Why we can't implement this in the institutions that house those people is beyond me, because women would not be as raped, they wouldn't be as molested as much as they are. Inmates wouldn't have their necks broken or been refused water to the point where they dehydrate and die if there was actual accountability. And when you have a natural 24-hour monitored recording device, you can't refute that.
As you know, on this show, we've talked quite a bit about cops making bad arrests or false arrests and downright illegal arrests. On a daily basis, we receive emails from people across the country who are detained and incarcerated for reasons that range from unnecessary to simply cruel. And as our guest just pointed out, the unprecedented and massive system of imprisonment we have created is designed specifically to inflict pain, not to rehabilitate, that it is the tip of the sword for the inequality warriors who hoard the nation's wealth and fund a massive system of heartless punishment to maintain their riches. Somewhere along the way, our justice system dropped the word justice and substituted it for cruelty. Political vengeance that has become the signature philosophy of a nation divided by gaps in wealth, poverty, and equity. It's the only conclusion we can make when the death of a man requires no greater response than a demotion, when prisoners are transformed into rightless beings who are subject to depravities that have no place in a democracy. I want to thank my guest, Jordan Cahill, for joining me today and for trusting us to share her story.
Thank you guys as well. Thank you for even venturing down this path. Not many people want to do it because they're afraid of the truth. So we appreciate you all the way from Florida picking this up.
Thank you. And I want to thank my co-host, Stephen Janis, for his invaluable reporting. And of course, our good friend, Noli D, for her amazing support and her research for us. And before we go, I want you watching to know that if you have evidence of police misconduct or brutality, please share it with us and we might be able to investigate. Just reach out to us. You can email us tips privately at par@therealnews.com and share your evidence of police misconduct. And of course, you can message me directly at Taya's Baltimore on Twitter or Facebook. And please like, comment, and share. You know I read your comments and appreciate them. And please share our videos to help us get the word out. My name is Taya Graham, and I want to thank you for watching the Police Accountability Report. Be safe out there.